Well, hello, Art. First off, and hello, anybody watching. This is the very first episode of Influence Me. This is where I, Dave Michaels, will be talking to legendary influencers in the unified communications and contact center space. And my first guest, honorary first guest, is Art Schoeller. Hello, Art.
Hey, Dave, thanks for making me the first, guinea pig
The
for
first guinea
Influence
pig.
Me, but happy to
Yes.
help.
Yes. Yeah, you're the very first guinea pig. We're going to get this thing sorted out. And so the series is called Influence Me, which is why it says that on the bottom. I am, let's see if I can figure out how to do this. I can't do this. No, you are Art Schoeller. Here we go. You are Art Schoeller. And I have to, I think, turn everything off to get my name up there again. No, that doesn't even work. I don't know how to get my name back up there. I didn't plan that one ahead. But anyway, Art, thank you for joining us. And we are going to talk. I got a bunch of questions for you that we're going to, inquiring minds want to know. So, first question. You've been in this industry for approximately 700 years, something like that. And you recently retired about 1.5 years ago. Is that accurate? 1.5?
It's accurate, except put the word semi in front of retired as I kind of
So,
work my way through. What am I going to be doing when I grow up? So,
well, as a matter of fact, I did see you just recently in Fort Lauderdale at a podium speaking and presenting. So yes, semi-retired. I thought it was a semi-good presentation, to be honest, and so that you were right on cue there. But you've been officially, you left Forrester, I guess, about 1.5 years ago. And so the first question that everyone wants to know is, what have you been up to?
so a couple things. First of all, I fixed a toilet.
Well,
That experience was that involved my first experience with cement because it was a cement underflooring that needed repair, and that went well. I
so
chaperoned
basically,
high
you left
school.
Forrester and everything went down the crapper.
That um, that is a good way to express it. Absolutely. So a second thing I did is I chaperoned high school kids being at an organic farm for a week. So that was an experience bunking in with 9 high school boys. Um, Third thing, since I have a lot of family that are election deniers, I volunteered to be a poll worker. So I spent a day at a polling site, checking people in, checking their names. And yes, I saw a scanning system fail, and then a second one fail, and then a third one fail. But what was interesting was I got to observe the whole auditing process to make sure that the votes were counted, that the people were authenticated. And I felt pretty good about that experience. So that's on the personal side. There's the business side where I've been doing stuff too, but it's been a fascinating time to, most of the work that I've been doing has been with the investment community. Lots of interest in CX and CCAS. And many of them kind of need to be walked through sort of the supply side and demand side of the market. I don't have quantitative, but they appreciate very much my ability to give them my years of experience in terms of what's really the dynamics in the market. So I've been busy.
Now, two things there. First off, I thought you had mentioned bicycling. I thought. I guess I was wrong that maybe you'd been doing some cycling in this past 1.5 years.
Oh, cycling is something I just do like breathing.
All right, good. So, did you do any big rides that you want to share?
Um, just some ones that were like up in Litchfield County in Connecticut during the fall. That was gorgeous. I haven't gone out west yet. And also just on a personal side, I'm getting ready for open heart surgery. And don't get shocked, don't get upset by that. It's just long-term issues that need to be addressed. So there's been work to prepare for that. Plus a lot of travel to see grandkids.
All right. The other question I wanted to follow up on there is you talked about the investment community. this week there's been a lot of headlines around. I don't know if you noticed, some companies have been shedding some employees, a lot of layoffs in the news. The headlines have been all about the big companies, thousands and thousands of jobs eliminated. What is your expectation? Is that going to trickle down? Do you think, are we going to hear about a lot of layoffs within the contact center and UCaaS space, or do you think it's just the big guys?
It's interesting, Dave. At the event we were at last week, we saw some investment advisors talk about the market, and they used the word contagion. That the layoff thing seems to be sweeping through tech, that investors are just kind of hopping on the bandwagon and demanding it. There's no question that one of the real things that caused this is that the pandemic actually drove a lot of demand, and now we're seeing some compression of that demand. So there was certainly some overhiring, so there's some trimming. I would not be surprised to see some of now granted, in our space, the companies tend to be smaller, other than, say, for example, in a Amazon or a Microsoft. But it would not surprise me, because one of the fundamentals is that during this anticipation of recession, we're hearing the words flight to quality. And part of that means a flight to profitability. So, if we've got a lot of firms out there that are trying to grab seats and they're not grabbing profits along with it, I could easily see some of that start to affect a request to reduce staffing.
So contagion is a bad thing, if I understood you correctly. But for some reason, viral growth is a good thing. Is that accurate?
Oh, choose your choose your adjectives. Yeah, I think contagion implies more negative. I mean, look, it's an impact on employees. It's ultimately an impact on what a company is able to do. Now, granted, if they've been a bit bloated, but I've been there. I've been on the receiving end of layoffs, and I've also been what I call a member of the remorse of the remaining, ones that get left after the layoffs, and that has a downturn in terms of morale and more workload. So I just hope.
My son, as you know, was just recently laid off last week, and they kept one person, and I just found out he resigned.
Well, then maybe
anyway,
they can bring back.
So I want to be sure we close that properly. Contagion is bad, viral is good, and open heart surgery is good. So let's get on the next question here. So you've covered in your 850-year career a lot of UC and CC topics. Let me ask you, because you're one of the few that covers both, one of the few, the proud, that covers both. Which is more interesting, in your opinion?
I hate to kind of toss UC under the bus because I'm not doing that. Okay. But there's so many threads and so many lines that you can draw in and out of CCaaS, because it's all part of customer service. A lot of times the business case is more explicit, although unfortunately it means we go rob the bank of agent salaries. But there's just so many threads of process, people, and technology, whereas kind of on the UC side, we're looking to improve productivity, and that 5 minutes a day per employee doesn't really strike much interest on the part of a CFO. The technology is interesting, and to see how we really iterated during the pandemic on that was amazing. But with customer service, even though we think customer service might be boring, there's just so many pieces, there's so many neighborhoods, there's so many things that need to be brought together to make it happen. I just putting that all together is more interesting, I think.
Wow. Okay. So not only did you cover UC and CC, you also covered it from Forrester and Gartner, and you've authored waves for both UC and CC, and Gartner Magic Quadrant waves as well. So let me just ask you a little bit, because a lot of people read these reports. I consider them great reports. We've talked about them quite a bit. which report? I'm not talking about the content of the report. I'm talking about the report template. Which report template or format do you think is the better format?
So there's a couple things to draw differences. Gartner will look at the entire portfolio that an organization has. Now, okay, how many vendors have more than one CCaaS? I mean, we've moved more to a point where we've consolidated, and to a certain extent, we can go small and large with more or less one platform. But at Forrester, the focus is on one solution. And I had one vendor that had a problem with this. They wanted to use another one for the evaluation. So there's a bit more of a product and company as opposed to the entire product portfolio. Now, if a company has too many products, that can be a drag. If they properly manage and orchestrate the R&D and the go-to-market, that can be a good thing. So that's one thing that's different. A second thing that's different is that, and this is not to, castigate, but when I worked at Gartner, there was some effort to, literally share the quadrant model with customers. Now, it was a long time ago. Forrester has continued that, even though there's been a smaller uptake than you might think, that customers can download the spreadsheet, change the weightings to make their own individual decisions. And so there's a level of transparency there that here's the score, here's the weighting, here's where the dot lands on the wave is actually computed. So I think that gives more granularity. Now, granted, it's numbers inside a spreadsheet. I think you've accurately said, Dave, that these are still opinions. I mean, there's tons and tons of work to arrive at those opinions.
Informed opinions. I said informed
opinion. Yeah, I mean, you try to make it as quantitative as possible so that you eliminate, because everybody wants to debate their score. Even if they're all the way up in the upper right, they still want to debate their score for some reason. But you try to make it as transparent as possible. At Forrester, our write-ups that go along with the wave tend to be, a strengths and challenges. Here's the strengths, here's the challenges, and keep it, sort of short, sweet, and to the point. I think that the Gartner write-ups have evolved to the point of a more extensive commentary on the vendor and their positioning. So I like reading the Gartner reports from that perspective. But that said, I mean, both firms will do a strengths and challenges as well. And both are used. I will readily admit that Gartner tends to be the one that is more read. I had more than one Forrester inquiry where the customer wanted to discuss the quadrant. And I said, well, that would be me discussing a competitor. I'd be happy to do that, but I probably have more detail on the report that I worked on, which is called a wave.
Yeah, it's easy for you to say because you wrote one of them, but I get inquiries on Gartner and Forrester waves all the time. So no problem at all. No problem at all. I didn't write either of them. So all right, let's this is a tough question. This is a tough question on the spot, but over your 950-year career in this space, what were some of the big surprises? What were some of the big shifts or changes that come to mind when you look back over this period?
One of the things that's more recent is, and we all got subjected to the pandemic and what we had to do. What surprised me, and it was really refreshing, was the speed at which the supply side, the vendors, moved so fast. And yes, the end users. There were some call centers that literally everybody's got to leave the building in the next 48 hours and go work from home. Boom! How the heck do you make that happen? So it was truly surprising with how quickly, so many organizations moved, the stress that caused. We're still living with the ripple effect of all of that. But, that was one surprising thing. Here's another surprising thing, though, that goes much further back in terms of history. We've gone through, the way I observe all of this, these major epics of the supply side, the technology and how it's changed. I'll go way back when we had analog systems converting to digital, and then digital converting to server voice over IP systems, and then moving from that to cloud. In each of those epics, if you will, um, kind of the surprise, although because these markets move slow, you sort of see it coming and then you see it evolve. In each of those waves, there was a disruptor that actually got enough traction that they became a dominant vendor. Cisco, what the heck were they doing with telephony? So they buy Celsius. Well, Celsius is not quite the best solution. And they had to convince customers to move to voice over IP. But here we have Cisco today. What happened when we went to cloud? Yeah, Microsoft had been investing for a long time in unified communications, but we moved to cloud, and here's a disruptor. Microsoft comes in and it's like, well, we thought they were just Word, PowerPoint, and Excel guys. So I think that my surprise, although it's been dispersed over a lengthy period of time, is that each of these epics have had a big disruptor. Last surprise, I really thought AI would move the dial a lot more. And yeah, in customer service, we focus a lot on deflection and containment, or whatever you want to call it. But I think the end result is more muted than I would have hoped. And maybe we're still working through it.
Well, I think it's just a matter of how you measure success, because for at least 20 years, AI was 10 years away, and we can see it 10 years away for at least 20 years. Now we've gotten enough progress that AI is only 5 years away. And so it'll be another decade or so of that. But I think that's progress in how we measure.
Well, Dave, an interesting point is that one of my managers at Forrester wanted me to write a paper entitled "Kill Your Contact Center by 2030." And I said, I won't write that paper. He said, well, make it 2035. I said, I won't write that paper. We'll make it 2040. I said, I won't write that paper. AI will never kill live agents providing service. Art's opinion, okay. Now, we finally worked it out where the result was a great paper on all the places in the contact center that AI could be applied other than just self-service. So it turned out to be a great paper, but I think that, yes, it'll take time. I think organizations still, though, come up short in terms of their investment. They get this far, they get this much automation, call it a day. Is it a great chatbot? No, but we're achieving a 20% automation goal. Same problem we saw with websites and IVRs, you name it. I see the same behavior.
So any kids listening, I want to be sure you understand what Art just said. His boss told him to write a paper. He said no, and today he's unemployed. So just take that, for what it's worth. And okay, let's move on to the next question here. So something that we agree on actually is that we both feel that peak Slack is behind us. You got to this conclusion a lot sooner than I did, actually, and so I wanted to ask you a little bit, when did you feel that Slack had lost its momentum and that maybe it wasn't going to be the giant that many of us had hoped it would become?
Remember when we got started with this, being hyped, group chat, persistent chat's been around for a long time. I mean, products and companies like Jabber and Parlano that got bought by Microsoft was here like 2006, 2005. All right. But along comes this idea that now this concept is going to truly disrupt and increase productivity and kill email. So we had 35, 40 different vendors all chasing this. Slack was the one that really led the charge. But then that compressed. A lot of them are out of business. And then these persistent chat applications sorted themselves out to a certain place. I took a lot of inquiries from customers, say 2017, 18, 19, and a lot of different choices. And then it came down to Teams versus Slack calls. When I really felt that we had hit peak Slack was talking to a large enterprise. And the typical scenario is, well, who's using Slack? Oh, it's the developers. The developers adore Slack and still do. But when an enterprise has to pay for a body of 2,000 developers $10 a day, and they already have Teams in their Microsoft Enterprise Agreement, it's like, why are we going to do that? So my signal was about 4 or 5 very large enterprises during the course of those inquiries saying that we've moved the developers over to Teams. I said, whoa, the castle wall has been breached.
Now what was the time frame?
About, I'd say 1920. It was before the pandemic, that's for sure. 2019, 2020.
Oh, okay. 1920. Okay, I mean 1920s, like 1920s. I knew you're old, but okay. All right. Okay. Yeah. 2019, 2020. Okay. That was, and that wasn't peak. That was that was a signal, as you said, and so peak Slack probably happened soon after that, or
yeah. And you know, Dave, as you and I have spoken, there's a number of great messaging applications out there. There's just which one's taking a lot of mind share. But for example, one of those firms was Glip, and I liked what Glip did. And I think when RingCentral purchased them and integrated all the other UC components into their client, they did a great job instead of just slapping 2 of them together on somebody's desktop. So it's not to say that this is everything else is dead and dying. There's plenty of adoption of many of these others, but the one that has really kind of gained a lot of mind share and a lot of daily active users is Microsoft Teams.
It's interesting about the term dead and dying, because I thought Cisco Spark was actually pretty interesting. It didn't technically die. They call it asynchronous messaging. It's a key feature of WebEx, but it doesn't even have a name anymore. It's just asynchronous messaging. It just kind of disappeared. And I was a big fan early of Unify Circuit. And Unified Circuit is now bottom left drawer item in somebody's office in RingCentral. So just that one did disappear.
Another interesting anecdote before I left Microsoft, this was 2010. I knew a lot of the headquarters guys, and the guy who was the competitive intelligence lead for UC. I placed bets with him. I said Cisco would buy Jabber. He said that'll never happen. And I won that bet because, again, Jabber was a well-established group chat application. It's where we got the XMPP standard from and largely used in the financial services industry, because there's always 2 sides to a trade.
Okay. I'm going to give you, this is a game. We're going to play a game here. I'm going to give you a totally fictitious headline, and I want you to kind of make up how this headline could have, if this headline was true, which it's not, what could have happened for this to result. So first headline that I'm going to make up is Salesforce is acquired. Let's say 3 years from now, Salesforce is acquired. So what do you think is behind this? Who acquired them? What happened? Give me a backstory.
Maturation of a category, and at the end of the day, industry consolidation. And boy, isn't Larry Ellison a real interesting character? And what would he do with marketing?
Okay, all right, that's good. That's good. That's better than I expected. All right, here's another headline again, totally made up. Apple to discontinue the iPhone.
Oh my God. Apple has now done, and to replace the iPhone, Apple has now invented and got permission to deliver a device that was talked about in the movie way back when, The President's Analyst. So those of you who might remember in that movie, there was this firm called TPC, the phone company, ostensibly modeled after the Bell system. And the whole idea was that there would be a wireless phone embedded in your brain. So we don't call it iPhone anymore. We call it iBrain.
Okay.
And that name wasn't in the movie, but
All right, here's another one. Amazon spins out AWS.
In order to gain increased valuations, because there's a huge divergence between e-commerce retail and cloud technologies, because Amazon has, succeeded and dominates a category, but there's hidden value because it's commingled with the e-commerce business. And so, boom, spins it out in order to gain a higher valuation for that business, driven by activist shareholders who have now purchased enough of a controlling interest to drive strategy.
All right, these are all pretty plausible explanations. I'll give you credit. Okay, last one. Microsoft end of life Teams. Now, I will say that when they did that with Skype for Business, people were shocked.
Well, Skype Teams sort of just kind of took the place of Skype for Business. It was just the next lily pad to jump to instead of ending an entire category. So, at the end of the day, Teams is ended because we now have something even better, which, again, with AI, is just so amazing that it manages all of our work communications. It is our digital buddy. So Clippy is back as Clippy 2.0, and Clippy is personalized and knows you and runs your day. There's an old video that is an Apple video. Now I went to Apple. If you remember, it was literally a digital assistant that was very smart and assisted me with my day. Microsoft finally gets around to inventing one and terminates Teams.
Okay. Last question. We're going to wrap this up. We're hitting the 30-minute mark, surprising. Last question here is there's been a lot of conversation, a lot of headlines around hybrid work, return to the office. A lot of managers want employees back in the office. A lot of employees don't want to go back. Most of this conversation has been around the general office population. I want to ask you specifically about remote agents at home. Do you foresee that being a long-term standard, or will agents be heading back to the contact center?
I think it'll be a long-term standard. I first worked on remote agents, actually as a product manager that sat next to me back in 1988. It was the first product we rolled out that allowed agents to log in from home into an ACD. Sort of a much more niche category of sourcing agent resources. But today, now that we know that we can do that and we need great agents and we need the flexibility, contact center work is a different kind of work. It is very structured. It is, in my opinion, the most monitored job short of a factory worker, on the face of the planet. We record, we listen, we analyze, we score. And agents got to take the next call. So given this structure, this snapback that we've got to going back to the office, I'm really disappointed to hear so many leaders sort of invoke the idea that we can't trust people to work. Great, okay. But agents, different story. It's very structured, it's very monitored, and it is a great way to source a very flexible labor pool that you need for a customer service operation. I don't see us snapping back on that one.
What about the confidential data, or what about dog barking and stuff like that? Thoughts on that?
Yeah, so the dog barking thing is real. We can do a lot with audio processing, dog barking, kids in the background. But I'll tell you one thing. I did an interesting study for Avaya. It's long enough ago that I can say Avaya. It surveyed 15,000 consumers across 11 countries around the globe. And there were two questions that were asked. And so this is beauty is in the eye of the beholder. It's the customer's perception of where's the agent working. If you sense that the agent is working from home, you're a more happy customer because you feel good about the brand you're dealing with, giving the agent that flexibility. If you sense that the agent's working for another company, meaning an outsourcer, that was a negative. So it's something that's here and something that I think is just here to stay as far as contact center work.
All right. Well, Art, I want to thank you for being on my very first episode of Influence Me, and I wish you the best with your upcoming medical procedure. I'll just call it that.
Yeah.
And I want to thank you for everything you have done to help this industry and help people like myself when we get confused. So thank you so much.
Thanks a lot, Dave. It was great to do this.
Okay.